Okay, YouTube, we are going back into this Bill Cooper. So we left off with him going to barack to barracks, routing out the night shift and those who had the day off. We had been told that we had about 15 minutes to launch all of our planes before the first atomic bomb would hit us in the event that the Russians launched an attack. I didn't even lock up the orderly room. I just jumped in the first car I saw, rode to the SAC compound, and reported to my red alert duty station. For the next 3 days, I slept under the belly of a B-52 bomber, staring at the Armageddon that hid just inside the closed bomb bay doors. We thought the shit had finally hit the fan. It was a great relief when the alert was ended. I left the Air Force with an honorable discharge in 1965. In December of the same year, I joined the Navy. I had always loved the ocean. I had wanted to be a sailor since I was a little boy. Seasick or not, I made up my mind to follow my dream. I was sent to the Naval Training Center in San Diego for boot camp. Because of my prior Air Force experience, I was made the recruit chief company commander. I was allowed to keep my same rank and pay grade. We had a good bunch of guys in my company, and we had a great company commander, Chief Campbell, chief electrician's mate. He turned the company over to me. The chief was a good man. He was only interested in teaching us what we needed to know and in keeping us out of trouble. Unlike most boot camp instructors, Chief Campbell had no axe to grind and wasn't trying to prove anything to himself or anyone else. He was truly our friend. During boot camp, I volunteered for submarines. My sense of adventure was very strong. I was accepted, and upon completion of basic training, was ordered to the USS Tyru SS-416 at the submarine base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Spitfire and damnation, no one could possibly be that lucky. I couldn't believe my eyes when I read my orders. Here I was, fulfilling my dream of being in the Navy. I got exactly what I asked for the first time that I asked for it, which was extremely rare in any branch of military service. And to top it all off, I was being sent to Hawaii, the land of tropical paradise. And let's keep in mind that did not belong to the U.S. I was in seventh heaven. I landed in Hawaii with no time to play and took a cab directly to the sub base. My submarine was nowhere to be found. I kept asking people until I found someone who told me that my boat, subs are just called boats in the Navy, was not at the sub base but in dry dock in the Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. I hailed another cab. The cab driver dropped me off at the head of a pier that looked like it had never been cleaned up after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. It was covered with what appeared to be hoses, huge electrical cables, rusty metal of every conceivable size and shape that you can imagine. The air was rank with the smell of diesel, welding fumes, paint, and steel. If there is a hell on earth, I thought this has to be it. I walked up the pier over to the edge and looked down into the dry dock. There, stripped of all dignity, lying naked and cut cleanly in half, was my boat, the USS Tyru. Men were scrambling all over it. It looked like ants swarming over a dead grasshopper. Brilliant flashes of light, brighter than the sun, drove sparks high into the air and then down in a beautiful flow to the bottom of the dock. I couldn't believe my eyes. Someone actually expected me to go out to sea, then underwater, in what appeared to me to be a motley collection of cut-up rusty metal scavenged from some satanic junkyard, stuck together by demons with welding torches. My luck had just run out. I reported to the barracks barge moored in the water on the other side of the pier and was given a hammock for when I had the duty. Then I was sent to the sub-base barracks where I was assigned a rack and a locker. I wanted to go into Honolulu but quickly discovered nuns' qualls did not rate liberty. It was getting worse. The next few months were spent sanding, painting, lifting, and learning the boat. The men of the crew, except for the chief cook, were great. The chief cook was drunk every minute of the day and night. He didn't like me, so I didn't get much to eat. His dislike stemmed from my first morning when I walked into the galley and watched as the other crew members ordered their breakfast. When there was an opening, I stepped up and asked for eggs over easy. That's when the chief hit the overhead and vowed that I would never eat a meal in his mess decks. He wasn't kidding either. The only time after that morning that I got anything to eat out of that galley was when the chief cook was ashore. To this day, I still don't know what I did wrong. I could have gone to the captain, but if I had done that, I might as well have put in for a transfer at the time. It wasn't long, though, before I was able to locate where he hid his booze. I made his life miserable from that moment on. I won't tell you what I laced his vodka with, but it wasn't anything you'd ever want to drink, believe me. I kept that chief so sick that he was transferred off the boat for medical reasons. I didn't want to hurt him, but it was either get rid of him or starve to death. I made up my mind that chief or no chief, I wasn't going to go to sea on a boat that wouldn't feed me. I didn't relish going to sea with a drunk chief in charge of closing the main induction valve when the boat made a dive. When a submarine goes underwater, certain valves must be closed or the boat will flood with water and everyone will drown. The main induction is the most important of those valves. It was the cook's duty to close it. Because the valve was in the galley on board the USS Tyru, I made 2 especially close friends while on the Tyru. Okay, so that was just him justifying, putting whatever he did in this man's looker. One was a black man named Lincoln, loving an American Indian seaman we called Geronimo. Let's see. A black seaman named Lincoln, loving an American Indian seaman we called Geronimo. The 3 of us were inseparable. Lincoln was best man at my first marriage. Of the 3, Geronimo was the most experienced seaman, so he taught Lincoln and me. He knew everything there was to know about the boat, rope, paint, and a whole lot of other things that a man had to know to survive in the Navy. I knew the most about getting along in the military, so I taught Geronimo and Lincoln. Lincoln knew every really good spot on the island where we could have a good time, so he led the Liberty Party. 3 things really stand out in my mind about the time that I spent on the Tyru. The first was an incident that occurred during a test dive while we were creeping along at about 3 or 4 knots at a depth of 600 feet off the island of Oahu. Lincoln and I had just been relieved from watch and were in the hurry. We were in the after battery talking when we were knocked off our feet. We heard a loud clang forward and felt the boat lunge to port. Then we heard a sound that made our blood run cold. I could literally feel the blood drain from my face as I listened to whatever it was that we hit scrape along the starboard side of the hull. Lincoln and I froze. We held our breath as metal screeched upon metal. I thought it would never end. No one moved anywhere. Finally, after what it seemed like a lifetime, the boat lurched and the noise disappeared aft. If it had pierced the hull, none of us would be alive today. We never found out what it was. When we returned to Pearl, divers went down to have a look. When they surfaced, they reported that the starboard bow plane was damaged and the hull was gouged along the starboard side from bow to stern. We went in for repairs. In a couple of days, we were good as new, but I certainly had an entirely different perspective on life. The second thing that stands out happened to another boat that had been out participating in torpedo attack exercises with another submarine. I remember seeing the boat entering the harbor with a large tarp over the conning tower. I could see something holding the tarp up on each side of the tower, but I couldn't see what it was. Later, Geronimo, Lincoln, and I walked over where the boat was berthed and looked under the tarp. The other boat in the exercise had scored a direct hit. What we saw was a torpedo sticking completely through the sail. We started laughing. Then we looked at each other and decided it wasn't funny after all. This submarine business was not as quite as attractive as I thought. Number 3 happened during transit between Portland, Seattle area and Pearl Harbor. I was the port lookout during the afternoon watch, 1200 to 600 hours. Geronimo was the starboard lookout. Ensign Ball was the OOD, officer of the deck. We were doing 10 knots on the surface, and the 3 of us were on the bridge in the conning tower. It was a bright day, but the sun was obscured by a low layer of clouds. It was cool. We had a bit of fun when someone below requested permission to put a man on deck forward to get something that was needed from the waterproof deck locker. The locker was under the deck plate all the way up on the bow near the forward torpedo room escape trunk. Geronimo and I laughed when Ensign Ball gave his approval. He really shouldn't have, because we were running a pressure wave over the bow. When we saw who it was they had sent on the deck, we roared with laughter. We looked down over the side of the sail at the deck level door just as it popped open and Seaman Lincoln Lovin stuck his head out. He didn't look happy. Lincoln reached down and put the runner in the safety tray in the deck, fastened the safety belt around his waist, and grabbing the handrail stepped out on deck. He looked up at us with that "don't you laugh at me" look that he did so well. It took him a few minutes to get up the nerve to let go of the handrail and begin to make his way forward against the wind and the pitching deck. Gingerly, he crept forward until he was just at the point where the pressure was rolling off the deck when the bow heaved free of the water on its cyclinal upswing. I could see that Lincoln was trying to time a run forward when the bow was out of the water. He made a couple of false starts, then ran slipping on the wet deck, disappearing into the access hole for the forward torpedo room escape latch. The bow plunged underwater, and I found myself sucking air as I imagined the cold salt water swirling around me. It wasn't me, though. It was Lincoln. I gripped the top of the sail as I waited for the boat to swing up, hoping that Lincoln wouldn't panic. What we saw next could have been a clip from one of those old Keystone Cops movies. Lincoln was flailing water so hard that it looked like he had 40 arms and legs. It was only then that I realized that Lincoln had joined the Navy, but he didn't know how to swim. When he finally gathered a foothold, the half-drowned seaman exploded up out of that hole like a Polaris missile and ran back to the conning tower just as fast as his wet leather soles would carry him. Ensign Ball, Geronimo, and I laughed for a good 10 minutes. In fact, every time we saw Lincoln for the next 2 days, we would burst out laughing. Lincoln didn't think it was funny and didn't miss a chance to slug us every time we laughed. Lincoln went below. Geronimo and I began the unending task of sweeping the horizon from bow to stern, then the sky from horizon to zenith, and then back to the horizon from bow to stern, again and again, and then a pause to rest our eyes and chat for a few minutes. I asked Ensign Ball to call for some hot coffee. As he bent over the 1MC, I turned, raising my binoculars to my eyes, and just in time to see a huge disc rise from beneath the ocean, water streaming from the air around it, tumble lazily on its axis, and disappear into the clouds. My heart beat wildly. I tried to talk but couldn't. Then I changed my mind and decided I didn't want to say that anyway.